shift the way you lead, the way you live. Clarity, courage, change. Because your next level won't wait. This is Monday Mindshift. The clarity you've been craving. The shift you didn't know you needed. Hello, everyone. I've got weird lighting because the power's out. So we're going to do our best to proceed, even though there is no electricity in the house right now. Got decent lighting. It's not terrible. I was kind of worried about it when I first got ready to go. And better late than never, and not as late today as last week. My son was asking me questions about his homework again, so life happens. Anyway, so I'm excited to share with you today's teaching. And as always, I appreciate you being here, carving time out of your busy life to spend this hour here. Oh, power just came back. Bingo. That's always nice. I appreciate you, and I'm grateful that you're here. Please comment, share ideas, share questions, tell me where you're watching from if I don't already know you. I know part of the crew will be coming in late because they're overwatching Leslie and Kimberly. So, and I see the numbers going up, so more people are coming. Great. Thank you for being here. Also, if there's topics, ideas you would like to see on Monday Mindshift, the show is not just about me. It's about you. What are the topics on the top of your mind? What are the shifts that you've faced? Coach Carey, thank you for being here. And let's see who else is here. It's frustrating when Restream does that, when it tells me LinkedIn user. Martha from California. Read the comments, Sean. Hopefully it's warm, and I'm sure Coach Carey's tucked in warm in her home. Appreciate you. As I said, anything you would like to see me talk about, share on, please drop me a message. Oh no, William, that's no fun. Yes, drop your comments, ideas, things you would like to see or discuss. Who knows? If you're open, perhaps we can do a live discussion like other shows. When I started Monday Mindshift, it was during the days of audio rooms. And the whole reason I did it was because I wanted it to be a conversation. Now, I've always been an adapter, right? Whatever the situation needs, I adapt, right? I live by a proverb I heard once a long, long time ago. Blessed is the flexible person, for they will never be bent out of shape. So when LinkedIn canceled audio rooms, I said, okay, let me go to the live video. For a minute, I had a co-host. I've had discussions with Sharon. We had some trouble getting her to be able to connect to Restream. I need to reach out to her, Sharon, if you're listening, to see if that's resolved, because I've been seeing her on more, like I just watched earlier today, I watched her discussion with the soul man, Aaron, and So I know she's getting on camera more and more. So perhaps the identity disruptor. That's a good one, Coach Carey. Partially because my identity was disrupted through external forces, and it was messy. So my vision was to help disrupt old identities in people so they don't have to go through the trials and tribulations that I did. But I will put that on my list, Coach Carey. The identity disruptor story. And I see somebody's joined us from YouTube. Once again, feel free to comment, say hi, say your face is too fuzzy, whatever. Just let me know you're there. Let me know who's here, who's interacting. I love it. I don't. There was one time with my co-host, we got the message from Restream like the stream reached X number of comments, and it felt good for a minute, but I don't get caught up in that. What's more important to me is that the message resonates down into the deeper levels, that it percolates into your soul and causes a shift in your life, in your path, a positive shift, not about negative shifts. Life will throw you enough negative shifts. My goal is to bring positive shifts to help everybody rise to more of their potential. So that's what I'm about. That's a little backstory, but I'll do a bigger expose, Coach Carey. Good idea. Anyway, let me go ahead and get started. Let me get my notes. Oh, my notes aren't here. That's interesting. So let me go to my other notepad. They're not in Restream because I found the notes tab in Restream. And oh wait, did I put them over? Perhaps. Nope. Okay. Sorry. Good morning, Leanna, up in snowy Minnesota. All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Where's my other Delio? All right. Thank you, Coach Carey, for sharing the YouTube. Good morning, Omar. Glad to have you guys all here. All right. Where did I put this? Oh, man. Was it here? No. I seem to have lost my notes. Let's see. I still can't find where I stored it. Power outages, everything else. Plus, I was doing my podcast. So, what's happening? What's happening, everybody? What's going on in your life? All right. I think I found it. There it is. All right. So, I got my notes. I'm good to go. I found them. Not sure why they aren't showing up in, maybe I didn't actually paste them over here. I thought I did. So once again, our title, you don't ignore wisdom because it's wrong. You ignore it because it was not expensive enough or it didn't cost you enough. Actually, that's the updated title. The original title on the event says, it said the wisdom you're ignoring because it didn't cost enough. I changed it a little bit after the fact. We ignore it because to us, it wasn't expensive enough. What I've learned is you and I, we don't get stuck because we lack the insight. We get stuck because we don't respect insight unless it has a high cost. The truth is, high performers especially don't ignore clarity because it's wrong. They ignore it because it feels too simple. It can't be that simple. We have this belief that I have to earn it, right? It has to hurt a little bit, right? We've all heard that, no pain, no gain. So when we hear someone say, "Oh, just do this," and you're like, "No, it can't be that simple." Right? Because if it didn't cost you something, you often don't trust it. This happens because at some point you absorbed a rule that hard means valuable. If you struggled, you got deep. And that pain was the proof. And it's not that the rule is wrong, because that built your resilience, not your resilience. The challenge comes is that also slows decision. Because when clarity arrives quietly, you doubt it, you hesitate it. You try to make it more like, oh, it's too simple. Let me find the more complex version. You look for pressure. You wait for some magical proof, right? Pain is not proof. It's usually just the cost that comes with delaying your response to the clarity. So here's the diagnostic. This is probably, you might have seen it play out like this. A partnership isn't aligned, but you wait. Instead of just saying, no, not interested, not going to work, you wait. Let me think about it a little more. A boundary is needed, and you hesitate. The next move, and you get into overthinking. It's not unclear. It just seems too obvious. And obvious brings up the alerts, right? Uh-oh, some suspicious. That can't be that easy. It can't be that obvious. Oh my gosh, how could I have missed that? Because we confuse difficulty with depth. I'm going to reset this because I'm not seeing any new comments. Let me check over here. Oh, no, we're caught up. Okay. As usual, So that's the diagnostic. You start overthinking, you don't set the boundary, action just dropped, came back. So you might see a blink, or you might have seen a blink. Where did it come from? Okay, this is going to be fun today. My internet is playing games. It's not Starlink, which isn't totally reliable either. But anyway, often you've built your identity on resilience, on survival, endurance, earning your place. And it's a powerful identity. But let me share the tension. To equate that growth requires struggle. And if it doesn't, the question comes, well, what happens to the identity of the one who earned everything? We're not resisting clarity. You're not resisting clarity. I didn't resist. I don't resist clarity. It's protecting the story of how we became who we were, who we are. Let that digest for a minute. You're protecting the story of how you became who you are. Now, I want you to think back about a lesson you learned and look at it closely. And let me ask this question. Did the pain create the lesson? Or did the lesson become clear when the internal argument finally stopped? Get on it. If we get honest with ourselves, we'll realize that most breakthroughs didn't come in suffering. They came from seeing. They came when the mental noise dropped and we saw the simple strategy. And simple feels risky because ego needs complexity to feel legit. Let me say this. Mature leaders don't wait for crisis to validate clarity. Now, first practice today, I call it the decision audit. Think of a decision you've delayed, not a complicated one, an obvious one. And here's the question to ask yourself. Is it actually unclear, or am I just waiting for the pain to justify the move? You can feel this. You can notice the difference here. If it's confusion, everything's scattered. If you're avoiding the clarity that you already have, it becomes defensive. And that's important to notice. Coach Carey, I see your question. That's a good question. I'm going to pop that up there. I see Coach Curry's playing on both sides like I did the other day, but I don't know about anybody else, but I've seen I'm having trouble with my connection. It keeps dropping, and I've had LinkedIn drop me, and I keep having to reload it. It's frustrating. So I usually do the comments on LinkedIn, but listen and watch on YouTube. Coach Carey shared that So Coach Carey asked, do you think it's our story or the story someone gave us? In my own experience, oftentimes it was somebody else's story that I adopted. Maybe our parents, grandparents, teachers, other powerful, other people in authority, the media, society. I think that's an important distinction. Like, if you're looking at the story, evaluate, is it my story? Like, purely, truly my story? Or did I borrow it from somebody else and make it mine? In our second practice, it's the famous 2 chairs, right? You can imagine the 2 seats, or you can actually set up 2 seats, 2 chairs, whatever you want to call it. In the first position is your earned authority. It's the part that says, if it doesn't cost something, it'll never stick. If it's too easy, we'll undervalue it. The hardship proves we deserve it. That voice built you, built me in the past. We should respect it. In the second position, we'll call them the strategic operator. So shift your perspective to that seat of the strategic operator. This part says, what's already clear? What decision has no need of additional evidence? And what move aligns, no matter how simple it is? Right? Earned authority says, well, if it doesn't hurt, it's not real. The strategic operator says, cost doesn't equal value, precision does. Let that breathe. And let it breathe. If you do the exercise, Leslie, good to see you. I know it's tight. I guess I could bump mine 15 later too. That might be a good idea. We should talk, Leslie. How we can adjust so that we have a nice buffer between them, at least for this season, because when time shifts in the US, the buffer gets back in. All right. So we talked about the 2 seats, right? The earned authority who feels it doesn't stick, it's not real, if it didn't hurt, if it didn't cost something. And the strategic operator says it's about precision. It doesn't always have value because it costs something. It doesn't always have value or importance because it took effort. It's about precision, as we said. All right. So now, after the exercise of looking at the two sides, we want to integrate them back in. And this is about updating a rule like insight must be earned to clarity is valid even when it's quiet. Every breakthrough does not require pain, injury, or bleeding. Sometimes you just need to move when you see it. Thank you. My son hollering at me, letting me know the power's back on. I know. So, as we were saying, you don't ignore the wisdom because it's wrong. We ignore it because it doesn't satisfy some part of ourselves that has made struggle and worth the same. But to lead at the higher level, it requires a shift. And that is to trust your clarity before the crisis. If something surfaced for you, maybe it was obvious, or you felt that quiet voice inside that said, I already know, I would request don't let it dissolve back to the delay. High level leadership, high level human is not about enduring more. It's about recognizing the clarity and acting sooner. I have my identity clarity calls where we convert things like that quiet knowledge into decisive movement. If it resonates, message me and book it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being you. I got through my teaching a lot faster than I intended. So that means we have 25 minutes for conversation. So if you're open, here's the link. Let me drop that in. Got it in the comments. Send it over to YouTube. Clear all the warning messages from Restream. Hey Gabe, welcome. Glad you made it. Since you just joined, Gabe, I just wrapped up the teaching and I've opened it up to conversation. If anybody's game, same point as always. I'm on video. You don't have to be. My original intention of Mindshift was to have discussions, to hear from people, to share ideas. I'm not afraid of a challenge. If you want to challenge my views, I'm okay with that. You know, there was a very Gabe. That's why I have guides. I have guardrails when I speak, Gabe, because I could just babble on about random, aimless stuff. I set guardrails for that purpose. But yes, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, share your ideas. Um, you don't have to be on camera. Just like to have conversations. Oh, I started to say on Leslie's Mind Over Matter just before this, I did catch part of that. And the topic was about trust. And of course, it did come up. A lot of it is about self trust. For me, it's trusting myself. It's trusting myself of what I do know and to know I don't know everything. And sometimes what I know could be wrong. And that was freeing for me. Instead of being rigid, like, nope, this is the way it is, I learned to say, oh, okay. And I can evaluate it. And it hasn't been easy because you don't want to get into this like you just take every input and flit around like a boat in the wind. That's no good either. You got to know your course, you got to have control of the rudder, but you got to be ready to shift when the wind does. And Coach Carey has joined the stage. Welcome, Coach Carey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry I can't have my camera on, but as soon as you said I didn't have to, I jumped right in. But I'm loving this conversation because the title is intriguing. You know, the wisdom you're ignoring because it didn't cost you enough. And so I'm just curious, what are the prices that you think some people are willing to pay? Because if we have the wisdom, it seems like we wouldn't want to pay that price. Does that make sense?
If it's true wisdom, I think
Okay.
that's the distinction. Like true wisdom, but again, it goes back to our stories. If we're stuck in old stories and old identities and beliefs, then we think this has to cost me. As example, right? There's an old belief, work hard to earn more. Most people today know working harder does not necessarily bring the dreams, the income. There's it's not about like, you don't get to sit on the beach with a pina colada and earn like sometimes they say, but that cost of putting in long hours, sacrificing your health, your family to build something, it's not true. I, but I think it's definitely true wisdom knows that I need to move. I have the clarity. Now I need to take a step.
And I know that, and I appreciate that. I know Leslie talks about the different fears. So I'm just wondering what fear might it be? And maybe she can chime in the chat or visit with us on stage. I'm just wondering what fear is that causes people, for instance, you say I'm willing to, not willing, but I sacrifice my family, my health, um, potential upside of income to work at a job for 40 hours a day for 40 years, knowing that it's not going to give me the life that I feel like I deserve. It seems like it's a mindset struggle somewhere.
And the way I see it, Coach Carey, is yes, mindset is one level, but it's a higher level, right? We change behavior. That's way at the top. That's the easiest to change usually, but it doesn't last, right? How many of us have, January came, we got that gym membership, and I'm going to get healthy this year. And before February finishes, it's over because it doesn't stick because it's very surface level. Mindset is down a few levels, but even mindsets aren't they're more solid than behavior, but they're still not solid enough.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So we have to. I know what Stanley Green talked about was with the cognitive behavior therapy, where we're addressing, the thinking, and we're also addressing the behavior as well.
Yes. And, you know, separate from, because I haven't studied the fears that Leslie teaches like she has, but I see it as sometimes it's a fear of losing identity, especially for high performers that built their identity on performance and endurance and all of that. So if suddenly you move out of clarity and it just happens and you're like, it can't be real.
Yeah, I've seen reports where people whose entire identity was based upon their jobs, and they worked at those jobs for 30, 40 years, and then they retire. There's a lady I know personally who passed away the same day, as her retirement, and then there's two gentlemen I know that passed away the very next day after they retired. um, and I don't know, their personal health history, but there was conversation about whether that was because their identity was gone. And you also see that with people, who have been in prison for long periods of time, and they get released, and sometimes they'll do something to go back because that's been a part of their identity for
Right.
such a
That's
long
that's
time.
their updated. It wasn't the identity necessarily when they started, but after all those years in that environment, it created an identity, and they don't know how to blend with society. And what you talked about, I've seen it personally with my wife, right? When when we packed our stuff and left the US and she gave her notice for a 15-year career, she didn't know who she was. She's like, who am I going to be? Like, if I'm not this person who's blah, 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 I don't know who I am. And I've seen it with highly successful founders who created, 7, 8, 9 figure companies that experienced great success. They have everything, all the trappings, right? They have money in the bank, they have nice cars, big houses, maybe two or three of them, all the trappings of success. They have the applause, like, oh, look what he did. And then they sell the company or they get ejected. Like one founder I spoke to, there was some family turmoil, um, that outed him. He went into a deep, deep depression and considered ending his life. And in January, when I went to a big event, we were supporting a nonprofit called We Are Enough. Is it We Are Enough? No, You Are Enough. And it was started because another story, the founder of Tom's, built Tom's to be very successful, did a lot of good in the world. If you don't know the Tom's story, if you're listening, Tom's was the first company that did a 1-for-1 charity. You buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes to somebody who needs them globally. He exited the company, sold it off, and went into massive depression. Thought about ending it. And he realized, thankfully, he had the support, he had the the team around him or the self-awareness to figure out that it all came back to this old wound of not feeling like you're enough. And Leslie shared some great comments as well, how her own father had a heart attack shortly after he retired, or just 2 weeks. And then she also shares, when long-term marriages break up, and how many times have we heard that? I feel whether it's a breakup or the loss of a partner, right? Often people like, I don't know who I am without my partner. Your thoughts, Coach Carey?
I definitely agree with you 100%. I think it does happen with those long-term businesses. Really happy to hear that the founder of Time made a different decision. And it definitely happens in long-term marriages, long-term relationships. When something has been a part of your identity for so long. And my last example will be about the gentleman who founded Toys R Us. When Toys R Us ended up going bankrupt, right after that, the gentleman passed away, and which I think is unfortunate because now Toys R Us is, they were able to revive it. But that had been a part of his identity since he was a teenager. I believe, just his really young years. And he was elderly, 80 or 90, but he probably could have got another 10 years out of there if his identity had remained tied to Toys R Us. So I agree with Gabe also, um, that we're reflecting on our experiences is one way that we learn. So I appreciate you sharing your stage with me. I'm sure you have a bunch of people backstage that want to come up and say hi.
I don't. So no need to run.
You all better click on that restream link and get in here and show support.
Don't
Our
be shy.
community is about engaging in the comments. I know Miss Leslie already told me yesterday that her favorite way is to do comments. But Gabe said he could talk for 25 minutes. Gabe, get up here.
Yeah, because I know Gabe does a show on relationships, so he could definitely add that relationship angle.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, and continuing on the fears, there's the fear of the loss of identity. There's a fear of responsibility without drama. Right? Simple wisdom can sound like this: have the conversation, set the boundary, leave, stop, say no. All clean moves. And they clear out excuses. But in simplicity, the delay becomes obvious and our mind complicates it. In fact, I just sending it now, Gabe.
Oh, Gabe said challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. Yes. So as I was saying, the mind complicates it. And I just recorded today's episode about momentum and motivation. It's kind of like water behind the dam. We don't get the water on the other side of the dam or a blocked pipe by pushing harder. We have to clear the obstruction. And that's where the wisdom is like clear the obstruction so it can flow.
That is such a great analogy. I have to write that down.
Yes. Catch the episode that dropped today. It doesn't actually talk about the water analogy, but it does talk about clearing the obstruction to get the movement. It won't come from more pressure. That's the wisdom, is like, okay, I pushed, it's not moving. Now what? What's blocking it? And I like this comment from Gabe too. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that's right alongside this clarity, this wisdom, because often the mental noise is too loud and we're running all the loops that constantly run. And we're afraid to stop and let the thoughts settle and find clarity. The imagination are thoughts, because once the experience has passed, it's done. We just continue to carry it in our thoughts, continue to carry the discomfort, the pain, the suffering along with us. Right? And it becomes easier to say, it's complex. I have a friend that does that. Every time we ask him a question about why this or why that in this country, he's like, es complicado. Like, is it? Right? Everybody has that hero story too. They want that hero story. Because the hard journey is, that's where the fanfare is, right? The hero conquers. It gets a little attachment. And Gabe is here. Let's say, hey, Gabe. Hey, Gabe.
Hey. Sorry,
Glad to have you here.
when Coach says something, I said, "Oh, she's calling me out. I got to answer."
Put them on blast.
Put him on blast. Well, sure. I didn't know you said, "Hey, you want somebody to come on?" Because I I am known for like monologuing for God knows how long. 4 hours is the record for me. That's the longest I've like simply just was on live and monologuing. So I think I can do this a little bit. So I was loving what you guys were talking about as far as the relationships, and even what you were touching on about pain and wisdom that comes with pain. Um, there was a book that I read by Mark Manson, and I know the title's crude. Listen to that. The title's crude, but it's hope is fucked. A book about hope, right? And one of the things that he does talk about in the book was how pain is one of our constants, and that it's also kind of one of our greatest teachers. Um, through the experience of pain, and not just physical pain, but the pain that validates a lesson, right? I mean, those things are the what is it? The psychological experimental learning bias. That's what I believe is what it's called. Um, but yeah, as someone who's gone through many things in my life, as someone who's always wanted to learn and continue to learn, I also learn that the best experiences, the best things do come with the pain involved of understanding, which is why I talk about love and relationships. Some of my hardest lessons have come from that sort of pain that was inside of me, that also, it kind of ushered me into wanting to learn and understand more and get a greater understanding of it. And yeah, of course, there is things like fear that are tied to a lot of it. Fear of loss, fear of, I mean, even having love right now. There's always some kind of fear that what happens when it goes away. What happens when those things shift and change? So I as someone who loves just hearing people talk about what it is to gain acquired wisdom without, I mean, with going through, I guess, the bumps, the scrapes, and the bruises that come from life. Um, People who just gain knowledge simply from, I don't know, schooling, things like that. I mean, how much does it really apply, and how many? I mean, we do this in school all the time, right? This was our education. How much of geometry do you remember from school that you apply to your life? Think about it. And you sit in that class for how long? You sat for how long? The lessons that you take from life, though, right? Those mirror just so much into your everyday function of just being a human being. Those things don't go away.
So here's a another perspective on that, Gabe.
Okay, I love these.
Can pain teach? Absolutely. Is it the teacher? I think that's the myth. We've been brought up to believe, we've learned to believe that our best lessons come wrapped in discomfort and pain and suffering, breakups, failures, loss, burnout, hitting rock bottom, all of that, right? Like,
Yeah.
I walked it. I walked it. And often, don't we say, well, that's where I learned the most. When I hit my rock bottom, that's when I really learned my lessons. But I want us to look deeper and closer. Was it the pain that taught us, or did the pain just finally break the arguments of not moving and not changing?
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Is that we get humbled. We get humbled because we can look at things like we can read a book and apply its knowledge early on in our lives, and then we go through failure after failure after failure, and then finally things do come into understanding more, and then you realize, you go back and read the book again, you go, this makes sense. Did the book change? No. Was the applied wisdom changed? Yes, that's what shifted, is because you excuse me, the book didn't get smarter, you got humble.
You got humble. And the other thing I like to think of, because I've gone back and read books and like read something and it's like, I didn't see that last time. Like
Yeah,
you said,
exactly.
like you said. And even if you got the third or fourth or 10th revision, the modifications are usually minor, right? When an author releases a follow-up revision, it's usually a minor revision. How much of it is I wasn't in the right stage or space?
Yeah.
Right? My mind,
Mhm.
it's kind of like the old saying, right? When the student is ready, the master appears.
Mhm. No, that's good. And I think and I think you're right when you're talking about a lot of the things here, because we can also take things from mentors, like borrowed experiences, things that they help us with, because they understand. It's almost a way to compress the pain. They've gone through it, and they walk you through, and it's why people always tell individuals when they're searching or trying to figure things, like, hey, get a mentor, get somebody who's experienced this, so that you maybe don't have to go through as much as what they did, right? And then, of course, there's just many things that you can do. Again, just having a track record of people who, a trusted source of comfort. um, People do this again with multiple things. People do it with, like, the Bible. They find comfort in understanding, like, hey, that so many people have taken so much from it. And I know it's I'm just stumbling on the word, interpretation of what somebody might read about it, but I mean, there's still much to it, if so many people have applied it and it's been trusted. It's like when people read Atomic Habits, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how they apply it. right? It's a trusted source that people have used over and over and over again to instill change in their life. And yes, they have a great, and you can have the people that, right, you can have the people that didn't work for me, but when you have so many people that help validate what comes from it, I think that's also what makes it, understanding you can trust it without having to go through the experience of trauma to get it.
Right.
If I can just interject, I was thinking as Gabe was talking, and I typed in the comments. A lot of times, I think that we're taught to move when pain happens instead of being proactive to avoid the pain. And I've even heard people say, I work better when I'm in crisis. And if you think about it, the conditioning that happens, I'm recalling a cartoon, Popeye the Sailor Man.
Yeah.
Remember, he would have to get beat up and swung back and forth and hit by Bluto. And then he would say, I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more. And then he would eat the spinach. It's like, dude, you saw him coming. Why didn't you just eat the spinach? But I think a lot of times we're conditioned to do those types of things. That's all I got.
Well, and on the Popeye, here's a rabbit trail. I recently learned this. Popeye is based on a real person.
What?
I'm not surprised.
He was a Polish guy in the late 19th or the mid to late 19th century who came to the US. He wasn't a sailor, but
Creative license, creative license.
creative license. He was a physical laborer, a bouncer, bartender, but he developed a reputation for getting in brawls and exhibiting these massive feats of strength and even telling tall tales to the kids. And true to the Popeye, he was a pipe smoking, eye squinting, wiry body. So physically, he resembled Popeye a lot. So he is based on a real person.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
But you're right, Coach Carey. It is a lot about conditioning. And even one of I call him my virtual mentor because I haven't actually got to communicate with him directly or shake his hand or any of that. And he always taught that, or he always teaches that when the pain of staying where we're at, of not moving, becomes greater than the pain of changing, that's when you move. For most of us, right? It's that fear of the unknown. Like, if I do this, and what if I do this? And, we go into the negative what ifs, right? What if, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if?
Mm.
But when our fear goes, this ain't working no more, where I'm at, I gotta change, that's when we shift.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're actually going to talk about this on our show on Friday. Our subject is about, of course, relationships, and it's based off of the question, what when is the right time to walk away, right? Because when you have relationships, you do have things like that play into it, right? It's a couple things. It's guilt, it's fear. Fear's a big one. Is what I'm starting to learn. It's history with with a certain partner or certain people. It's hard to walk away from that as well. And then the last one is hope. People have hope. They still instill hope. They're like, I hope this person that I've been with for so long, maybe they will change or they'll become like they were when we first met. So we're gonna dive into this a little bit deeper from the aspect of love and relationships. So that's good. I love this. This is perfect.
And that sparked something I just read in my daily reading today. I'm reading a book by a psychologist, George Pransky. It's called the Relationship Handbook. Very apt title. But he talks about a couple that comes in, the wife comes in for counseling. They have 2 teenagers from previous marriages. And 2 weeks prior, she found out he'd been having an affair.
Oh.
And as you would expect, you come into a counselor, she's talking about her feelings. She's really angry. I can't even look at him. And the therapist starts with, the understanding, right? I'm sure it must be really challenging to be at home, very unpleasant. And the therapist says, this might sound crazy, but you have to forgive him and remove the incident from your consciousness. And she's like, what? Are you joking? I can never forgive him. And he says, do you see how troubled you've been lately? She's like, yeah, I've been feeling terrible ever since I found out. His words, that's because the thought of the affair has polluted your mind. That's what negative thoughts do to us. She comes back with, it's not just a negative thought, it's a negative experience. He says, it was an experience when you found out. He's like, it's not an experience anymore. It's a thought. That thought you would more easily let go if it came from a dream, right? How many times have we had a dream of something bad happen and we wake up and it's like, oh, that was okay. And we move on. She says it wasn't a dream. It happened. Therapist says, it didn't happen to you. I'm not minimizing the pain of this experience, but that experience is stored in your memory in a section we can call painful thoughts. You can easily open that file up in memory and bring those all back to mind and live in this painful, uncomfortable, distressing state. And he goes on, he basically talks to her more and more about, you've got to let go of this. And it was the idea, by holding on to these resentments, we think we're solving something, but often it's like walking around with sharp rocks in our shoes.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be comfortable.
No, it wouldn't. And you would want your friends to say, why are you wearing rocks in your shoes? Are you crazy? But we do it with our thoughts all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, such a great point. And I'm looking forward to going to Gabe's show and getting this, expanded concept about how this applies in relationships. You all know I do a show on Sundays where I talk about financial awareness and financial resiliency and financial management. But on Sunday, I'm also going to be talking about how we can measure our decisions and what that looks like, because I just believe that mindset is so important when you're talking about any area of life. And so I'm looking forward to, I love this show. I'm looking forward to Gabe's show. I'm going to jump off. I'm glad we got a chance to have a conversation today.
Yes. Thank you for joining, Coach Carey.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any closing thoughts, Gabe?
Well, as you know, as we sit here and we're talking about that, I think that's the thing that most people have a hard time coming to grips with, is disassociating the experience from the thought, and then being able to say, if I no longer harbor this thought, then the experience becomes void of what it controlled over me. And I think that's so hard for human beings to go, I can do this. Like,
And it that
it,
stitches back into everything we've talked about before, doesn't it? Letting go of
yeah.
identities, ignoring wisdom. Like it, I think of it this way: if your partner has an affair, yeah, it sucks. That's messed up. It happens. It's reality. If you've ever watched Esther Perel, she talks about
All the
why
time.
happy couples cheat.
Yes.
It happens. We are human. Okay, we're flawed, and we screw it up royally. But I think that's the reality. Is like if you have the clarity, like I love this person at my core, and I want this to work. Okay, then that means you got to forgive it and let it go. Stop bringing that painful memory back up, or decide like, nope, I'm done, and move. Right? It's a clean move, one way or the other. Fix it, deal with it,
Yeah.
or get out. And I think you said, I think I saw this in one of your posts, Gabe, or maybe I just heard it somewhere. I never tell friends or family to get out or divorce, and I never do.
Hmm.
I'm like, that's not my decision. That's your decision. But what I tell people is, you got to make a decision. Like, are you going to do what it takes to make it work, or are you done? This back and forth and dancing around, like, how much pain do you need to suffer before the wisdom comes, before you acknowledge that it's coming?
Yeah. And to be honest, I think that there are people that become comfortable at times with that fear because they get to a point where it's familiar, and they know what it is,
Right.
and they've learned to adapt to it. And it's like you said, only when it comes to a certain point that they say, okay, the rocks are starting to hurt. I need to move.
Need to
Like,
get some new
or
shoes.
yeah, yeah, I need to get new shoes or get them resold. But something has to happen that changes and shifts that, because that kind of existence, uh, it's hard for anybody to imagine having to live, let alone exist in that kind of environment.
And I'll be honest, let's see, I'm 57. My parents died 20 years ago. So that's 37. Go back. So, because my parents split when I was 15,
Hmm.
it was ugly, like disgustingly ugly. But I remember my dad died, and I was visiting my mom, and she was going on and on and on, activating that painful memories section.
Yep.
And I remember I looked at her and I said, Mom, he's dead. He's been dead for a few years. Enough. Like, why do you keep bringing this up? It's done. You guys divorced. I mean, this was 12, 15 years of carrying this, and she's still carrying it.
Wow. Woo.
And she died shortly after that. And her new husband, I remember having a talk with him when we were visiting. He's like, she's just so bitter. And he's like, I really feel like she's killing herself with carrying this bitterness.
It is. It's a toxin. It's a poison. It's like cancer for the soul to be carrying that.
Yeah.
Like you can't. And what I said, to live in that existence, it will literally eat you from the inside.
Yeah.
And
one of the best unforgiveness or resentment,
Mhm.
I heard this, is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
That's a good way to put it. Yes. Exactly. Like you can't. It's ludicrous to think about it, but yet people. This is what people's existence is in some relationships.
We get trapped in thoughts, and
Yes.
we let the thoughts. It's the muddy glass of water, right? We think we need to stir it up or poke it, and sometimes the best thing is to just put it aside and leave it alone and let it settle so you can see clearly. And then you can recognize that wisdom that's available to any of us, right?
Yes.
Right there. I don't know how many times I was talking to somebody and something came out of me and I'm like, where did that come from? I didn't read that. I didn't take a course on that, but I came out with some wisdom. I'm like, wow, okay.
Man, we need to have a further talk about this.
Right. We could probably
We
go
need to
on a
find a time.
24-hour rant on
Yeah.
my wife might divorce me, but
well, luckily my wife's like, okay, I'm okay with doing this, but she even she has a limit where she's like, okay, let's.
my wife's very supportive.
2 hours.
She has a limit, yeah.
As well, I gotta hop off because I gotta go jump on another call. But
Likewise,
it was
I smell
fun.
lunch cooking. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody listening. So we'll see you next week. Feel free to drop comments here. Anybody, Gabe, you included. I'm gonna go find your show and see if I can join the show later. The one that you said's coming up.
It's Friday. I'll send you the link. I'll directly link it to you so you have it.
Yeah, feel free to drop comments, send me a message like, hey, Sean, I'd love to talk about this on Monday Mindshift. And let me know if you're willing to be bold like Gabe and Coach Carey, come up here and actually speak or just talk about the topic. Thanks again, everyone. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
In the shadow of a mirror, where the past holds tight, he walks in with fire, igniting the night. A truth seeker's vision, he shines through the black. With every step forward, he won't look back, telling tales of struggle. The masks we wear, we're bound by the labels, lost in the snare. Time to break free from those chains of doubt. With his voice like thunder, he calls us out. This is the awakening. The rebels arise. Feel the storm within you. It's time to defy. We're breaking the silence. empowering the fight. In the shadow of a mirror,